Welcome to this new topic now, international parity relationship in foreign exchange management chapter. So in this chapter we are going to see the relationship between exchange rate and interest, exchange rate and inflation, and then the relationship between interest and inflation rate. A very important topic, because this topic now will be required in some other topics also, like international capital budgeting. Okay, so first we will see international parity relationship. Under that there are three. One is interest rate parity theorem, second is purchasing power parity theorem, and third is relationship between interest and inflation rate called international Fisher effect. So IRPT, purchasing power parity theorem, and international Fisher effect. So that is the scope of our work in this chapter. A very important topic, right? First, today we'll start with interest rate parity theorem. What does interest rate parity theorem says? Interest rate parity theorem simply says, if a country has higher interest rate, its currency would depreciate, and if a country has lower interest rate, its currency would appreciate. So therefore, if a country has higher interest rate, foreigners would try to invest in that country because it offers a higher interest rate, but that benefit is nullified because of the change in the exchange rate, and therefore the gain which is due to a higher interest rate is nullified by the loss in the exchange rate, and that is called interest rate parity theorem. Let us take an example of India and USA. All of you know in India the interest rate is high as compared to USA, and that is why you will find Indian rupee depreciates and US dollar appreciates in general. So to prove our interest rate parity theorem, I will first start with an example, and with the example we will be able to prove the theory also and prove the formula also. So let us start with an example. A good news is that this example is printed in your book, so you can concentrate on understanding. Spot rate today is rupees 60 per dollar. Spot rate today is rupees 60 per dollar. Interest rate in India is 10%. Interest rate in USA is 4%. So interest rate is higher in India, and you will find in this example that rupee will depreciate and dollar will appreciate. That is what I have to prove under interest rate parity theorem. So the question is, what is 1 year forward rate? What should be the 1 year forward rate? Now in this chapter also, the 1 year forward rate should be such rate that there is no arbitrage. No arbitrage rate. If the rate is different from what we have computed or we will be computing, then that will give rise to arbitrage opportunity by borrowing in one country and investing in another country. So what should be 1 year forward rate? In India the interest rate is 10%, in USA 4%. So normally what people will do, by looking at this rate, they will become very greedy. Oh, just borrow in USA at 4% and invest in India at 10% and enjoy a 6% differential. So looking at this rate, the investor would try to do the following. They will borrow in USA. To help us to understand better, I will assume that investor or a person will borrow $1,000 in USA because he finds interest rate there is low, in India high, so borrow in USA, invest in India. That is what he is thinking. So he will borrow $1,000 in USA at 4%, and his outflow after 1 year will be 1040. How did you get 1040? He will have to repay 1000 principal and 4% interest. So this number is logged. If you borrow $1000 for 1 year at 4%, your outflow after 1 year is logged. Now this fellow will come to India, convert $1000 into rupees at the spot rate. What is the spot rate in the question? 60 rupees. See, the question book should be in front of you continuously. So therefore today he will be able to convert $1000 at 60 and he will get 60,000 rupees. What he will do with this 60,000? He will invest in India. So invest rupees 60,000 in India at 10% per annum. So 60,000 invested at 10% per annum for 1 year. So what will be his rupee inflow after 1 year? That number is also logged. If you invest 60,000 rupees at 10%, assuming no uncertainty involved, so you will get 66,000. Both these numbers are logged now. After 1 year, you have to pay 1040 in USA and you are going to receive 66,000 rupees in India. So both numbers are logged in advance. Both numbers are already logged in advance. You are certainly going to receive rupees 66,000 in India and you have to certainly pay $1040 after 1 year in USA. That means after 1 year, when I will convert this 66,000 rupees into US dollar, I must get 1040 so that there is no arbitrage opportunity. Hence we need to cover ourselves by selling rupees 66,000 at 1 year forward rate and get 1040 to ensure no arbitrage opportunity. After 1 year, these two figures must be equal on conversion at the 1 year forward rate. This 66,000 divided by 1 year forward rate, forward FWD, should give me $1040. If not, the arbitrage opportunity will arise, right? So what should be that 1 year forward rate? That 1 year forward rate should be 66,000 divided by 1.040. 66,000 divided by 1.040 and you will get 1040. 66,000 divided by 1040 and you will get 63.46 per US dollar. So 66,000 divided by 63.46 should be 1040. Now suppose the forward rate is not 63.46. Suppose for the sake of understanding, the forward rate quoted by the bank is only 63. Quoted by the bank is only 63. So 66,000 divided by 63, you will actually get $1,047.62. So what you will do? You will convert 66,000 rupees at the rate of 63. You will get $1,047.62 and then you will repay your dollar borrowing 1040 and you will be able to save, or your arbitrage profit will be $7.62. So if the exchange rate is below this, if the 1 year forward rate quoted by the bank is below this, the arbitrage opportunity will arise. And if the 1 year forward rate is more than this, if the 1 year forward rate is more than this, suppose 65, reverse arbitrage will arise. You will borrow in India and invest in USA. You will borrow in India and invest in USA. So if the forward rate quoted by the bank is less than this, then also the arbitrage will arise by borrowing in USA, investing in India. And if it is more than this, then also the arbitrage will arise by borrowing in India and investing in USA. So therefore 1 year forward rate has to be 63.46 per US dollar. So this is called interest rate parity theorem. Now look at the rates and you answer my question, which currency has depreciated in this? Spot rate was rupees 60 per dollar and 1 year forward rate is 63.46 rupees per dollar. So my question is, which currency has depreciated or which currency has appreciated? Dollar has appreciated. $1 can buy more rupees now. So dollar has appreciated, which means rupee has depreciated. Why rupee has depreciated? Because the interest rate in India is higher. So country with higher interest rate, like in this example, rupee will depreciate, and the country with lower interest rate, in this example US dollar, will appreciate. So if actual rate is less than 63.46, I have shown you, it will give rise to an arbitrage profit, and if it is more than that, then you can again make arbitrage profit by borrowing in India and investing in USA, and you will make the profit. While solving the numerical questions in next few minutes, we will take both type of situations. When the actual forward rate, write down, is less than what it should be, and actual forward rate is more than what it should be. A very typical exam question they will ask you. Now next is, come back to your book, some theory discussion and then understanding the formula. Directly I will not give you the formula, I will prove the formula with the help of numbers so that you are convinced. IRP, interest rate parity, characterizes the relationship between the interest rate and exchange rate of the two countries. Interest rate parity theorem shows the relationship between exchange rate and interest rate of the two countries. This theory says the exchange rate is affected by the interest rates in the two countries. Exchange rate is affected by the interest rates in the two countries. That means the exchange rate differential. Exchange rate differential means the difference between forward and spot rate will be equal to interest rate differential. Will be equal to interest rate differential between the two countries. Exchange rate differential will be equal to interest rate differential between the two countries. The interest rate differential is equal to exchange rate differential. Now we are going to prove this theory that interest rate differential is equal to exchange rate differential with the help of numbers. When you see numbers, you are motivated. So we will take the same example which was printed in the above paragraph. Forward premium on USD, that is your exchange rate differential in percentage. I can't compare in absolute value, one is rupees, one is interest rate. So I will see the percentage F minus S by S. We have got these numbers in the question, 63.46 minus 60 divided by 60. So kindly take your calculator, 3.46 divided by 60. So you are getting 5.77%. That means the forward rate is at a premium of 5.77% per annum. Now look at the interest differential. How is interest differential calculated? Difference of interest rate upon interest rate factor. Difference of interest rate is 10% and 4%. So 10 minus 4, 6%, divided by interest rate factor will be 1 plus the foreign exchange rate interest, foreign interest rate 4%. and after some minutes I am going to prove this also, that why this is right. Okay, for a minute just take it. Interest rate difference divided by interest rate factor, difference in the two interest rate 10 minus 4 6, and divide by interest rate factor, which will be 1 plus rate of interest in foreign country 4%. So that comes to 5.77%. Please check, 6 divide by 1.04, same answer, and these two are equal. That we are going to prove with the help of some equation later, don't worry. Now, according to interest rate parity theorem, this is very important line, because in the exam they ask you this theory question, why rupee has depreciated vis-a-vis US dollar. So you will say, according to interest rate parity theorem, the country with lower interest rate, that country will find its currency at a forward premium in terms of the currency of the country which has higher interest rate. So country with lower interest rate will find that its currency will appreciate, and the country with higher interest rate will find that its currency will depreciate in relation to other country. So in an efficient market, the forward rate is said to be at an interest rate parity. The forward rate is said to be at interest rate parity, and the equilibrium prevails in the exchange rate market. What do you mean by this line? In your questions which are going to come now, they will say that forward rate is said to be at interest rate parity. It means the bank will quote you forward rate, which is the forward rate as per interest rate parity theorem. So bank also knows I need to quote that forward rate which will be as per IRPT, otherwise the arbitrage opportunity will arise. So if the markets are efficient, the forward rate quoted by the bank will be equal to the forward rate as determined by the interest rate parity theorem, and equilibrium will prevail, means no arbitrage. No arbitrage. In an efficient market, no arbitrage opportunity will arise. Interest rate parity theorem states that high interest rate on a currency is offset by the forward discount, and that low interest rate is offset by a forward premium. Look at the example we solved. In India, the interest rate was 10%. In USA, the interest rate was 4%. So India is trying to attract the foreign investment by offering a higher interest rate. But that effort to attract more US investment in India will be nullified, because after 1 year, when that US citizen would take back his money, he will find that there is an exchange rate which has changed in such a manner that whatever was the benefit that he enjoyed due to higher interest rate in India is nullified by the depreciation in the Indian rupee. So therefore, you will not be able to make arbitrage profit by just borrowing from one country and investing in another country, because the exchange rate would change and it will nullify that benefit. If that does not happen, that means if the market is not an efficient market, which is quite possible in practical world, then the arbitrage opportunity will arise. And then what you can do, you can borrow in one country and invest in another country. So while solving the questions, you will assume that it is possible to borrow in one country and it is possible to invest in another country. So do not ask such question, what if you can't borrow in USA? I am a student, how will I borrow in USA? That is not to be discussed. We will assume, for the sake of understanding, borrowing is possible. Investing is possible in any country. Now you will see the relationship between interest rate and exchange rate. Formula printed in your book. This is called IRPT equation. Suppose direct quote is given to you. Direct quote means home currency per unit of foreign currency. Then the equation is 1 plus RD upon 1 plus RF is equal to forward rate upon spot rate. What is RD? Interest rate in domestic country. RF is interest rate in foreign country. S is the spot rate and F is the forward rate of foreign currency. Now for your satisfaction, I am going to solve the same example which was printed in our book, and we will see whether we are getting the same forward rate that we had got in that small story printed in the first paragraph. So interest rate in India is 10%, interest rate in USA is 4%, forward rate we have to find, and the spot rate is 60, which means forward rate will be equal to 60 multiplied by 1.10 divided by 1.04. So please, dear student, take your calculator and solve, and if the answer is matching with what is printed in the above story, that is 63.46, then I will request you that you now get convinced that this formula is working correctly. This formula you will use for finding either RD or RF or forward rate or spot rate. Most of the time this forward rate is missing. So using this formula you can find the forward rate. In some question RD may be missing. Again apply this equation and find RD. So there are 4 variables, and in the exam question 3 of them will be given to you and you can find the 4th one. So you are convinced that this formula is working correctly. What if indirect quote is given? If indirect quote is given, then the formula will be 1 plus RD upon 1 plus RF equal to S by F. So the right hand side of the equation we have changed, S by F. So there are 2 ways you can do it. Either you first convert direct quote into indirect quote and then apply the direct quote formula, or if suppose you want to solve fast, apply the indirect quote formula and you will get the answer. Some important things we will discuss now. We will first arrive at the equation which I had promised you, that the difference in the 2 interest rate upon 1 plus RF is equal to F minus S upon S. So I am going to fulfill my promise now. Those who are interested can understand the derivation of the formula, otherwise just remember. This is the IRPT equation. We have proved this equation. Some minutes ago we have proved this equation by finding the value of F which was matching with the above story. Now 1 plus RD upon 1 plus RF equal to F by S. Deduct 1 from both the sides. Deduct 1 from both the side means 1 plus RD upon 1 plus RF minus 1, and this will also become F upon S minus 1. Will it make a difference in the equation? No. In your mathematics you have learned, if the same number is deducted from both sides of the equation, the answer still remains the same. Now what I will do, I will go to this step now. 1 plus RF in the denominator, the numerator will become 1 plus RD minus in bracket 1 plus RF equal to, and this F upon S minus 1 will become S in the denominator, F minus S. So now I will simplify this. 1 and minus 1 will cancel, and the numerator on the left side will become RD minus RF. Can you see in your book? I have written it, RD minus RF. Denominator is same and the right side is same, F minus S upon S. This RD minus RF upon 1 plus RF, this is called interest rate differential, and this F minus S upon S is called exchange rate differential. Now it is proved. So in some question, suppose they only give you RD, RF, then also we can solve and find out some missing number on the right side. Okay. So both formulae can be used for finding the missing number. Either you can use this formula or you can use this equation to find the missing number. Whichever you find it simpler. First one I think is simpler. So most probably we should use the first formula. But yes, you can use the second equation also, which is little complicated or maybe more time consuming, to find out the missing figure, either RD or RF or F or S. Now some exam tips for you. This is a highly tested area in the exam, and the knowledge of interest rate parity is required to solve other questions also. So I am going to invest some more time on this. If the forward rate is to found out for a period less than 1 year, so the formula which is printed in your book assumes forward rate is for 1 year, but of course in the exam you will have to find out 3-month forward rate, 6-month forward rate, 9 months forward rate. Then in that case we need to convert the annual interest rate into periodic interest rate. We need to convert annual interest rate into periodic interest rate. For example, if annual interest rate is 12% and the problem is of 3 months only, then the interest rate for 3 months will be 3%. So what I'll do, I will just change the left hand side, 1 plus RD into 3 by 12 upon 1 plus RF into 3 by 12 equal to F by S. If it is a 6-month forward rate problem, then this I will make it 6 months. If this is a 9 months problem, then I will make it 9. If it is a 1 month problem, then I will take it as 1 month, right? This formula we will use when interest rate is not compounded continuously. The formula printed in the previous page, if the interest rate is compounded continuously, then the formula will become e to the power RD into T. This e to the power RD into T means the future value factor of rupee 1 at rate of interest RD for time T. And similarly, this e to the power RF into T means future value factor of rupee 1 at rate of interest in foreign country for time equal to T. So basically we are doing the same thing, but we are using continuous compounding formula to find the value of 1. I'll just go to the previous slide. In previous slide, when the interest rate is not compounding annually, then this also gives me the future value factor of 1 rupee. Suppose interest rate is 10% in India, so it becomes 1.10. 1.10 is nothing but future value of 1 rupee at 10% interest rate for 1 year. So here also I am doing the same thing. So logic is the same. We are taking the value of 1 rupee after the given time period at domestic rate and at foreign interest rate, and the right hand side is exactly the same. This can be simplified also, because in mathematics, if e to the power rd into t is given upon e to the power rd minus rf into t is given, rf into t, so what is common? T. This can be mathematically written like this: e to the power rd minus rf into t and equal to f by s. So you can either remember this formula or you remember this formula, but logic I have explained. Future value of 1 rupee at domestic interest rate divided by future value of 1 rupee at foreign interest rate. But mathematically this step can be simplified as e to the power rd minus rf into t. T is the common factor here, equal to f by s. So according to your memory capacity, you can either remember one of them or both. Only in your book there may be some typing issue. This should be in power. This should be in the power. So if it is not, then you please just make some correction there. Right? Have you noted this down properly? If IRPT equation, when interest rate is compounded continuously, e to the power rd into t upon e to the power rf into t equal to f by s, or e to the power rd minus rf into t equal to f by s. We'll take an example on this a little later. Right? Please keep noting down whatever you think is required for you for future reference. Now I am going to give you some very important points for exam purpose. Suppose direct quote is given and the question is asking you whether arbitrage is possible or not. Very typical question in the exam, whether arbitrage is possible or not. Then they will give you one actual forward rate. You calculate equilibrium forward rate as per IRPT, and if you find that actual forward rate is less than, this sign is less than. Some people get confused in less than, more than. So you can write less than. Equilibrium rate, money will flow from foreign country to home country. That means borrow in foreign currency, borrow in USA if you are an Indian, and invest in India. The example printed on the first page of this chapter belong to this category. There the rate is 63.46. But instead of that, if it is 63, you will borrow in USA and invest in India, and you will get some extra dollar after 1 year, and reverse. But this is applicable for direct quote. If forward rate is greater than equilibrium rate, like we had calculated 63.46 and you are given a quote by the bank at 65, enjoy. Borrow in India and invest abroad. So in bracket write down borrow in home currency and invest in foreign currency. That will give you arbitrage profit. If you are given actual forward rate and it is a direct quote. In the case of indirect quote, it will reverse. Okay. In the case of indirect quote, the above statements will reverse. What are the questions they ask in the exam relating to IRPT? So first type of question is, they will ask you to calculate the forward rate. So they will give you domestic rate, they will give you forward rate, and then you will have to apply the formula and find the forward rate. In some question they will give you forward rate and the interest rates in the two countries, and you may be asked to find out spot rate. And in some question they will give you forward rate, spot rate, interest rate in one of these two countries, and you have to find the interest rate in the other countries. What I will do, once I am able to identify that this is an interest rate parity theorem problem, write this equation and find out whatever is the balancing figure. Second typical question in the exam, many times they have asked, where will you borrow from and where will you invest? Where will you borrow from and where will you invest? This second type of problem is very easy to solve when one-way quote is given. Sir, what is one-way quote? One-way quote means only one exchange rate is given. That means bid rate and ask rate are same. That means they will simply say spot rate is rupees 60, forward rate is rupees 63.46. Very easy to solve such questions. Okay, where will you borrow from, where will you invest? So if it is a direct quote, I have already given you the hint. In case of direct quote, if actual rate is less than equilibrium rate, borrow from foreign country, invest in home country. If actual rate is more, actual forward rate is more than the equilibrium rate, borrow in home country and invest in foreign country. And one more trick I will give you to solve a question where one-way quotation is given. But when two-way quotation is given, two-way quotation means bid ask is given. So you will be given spot rate is 60-60.50 and forward rate 63.50 and 64.20, something like this. Now in this case, this method will not easily work. So what I'll do, when bid ask both are given, I will solve the problem twice, that is easier. I will first assume borrow in foreign country, invest in home country. Then I will assume borrow in home country and invest in foreign country. Whichever path gives me the positive answer, that path we will follow. Sometimes both path may give you negative answer. If both path give you negative answer, then you will say arbitrage is not possible. Okay. So in case of bid ask problem, it is better to solve it twice. We will take one question of this type also. First you assume borrow in foreign country, invest in home country and see whether you get arbitrage profit or not. Second, you assume borrow in home country and invest in foreign country and see whether you have arbitrage profit or not. So a question of this category we are going to solve very soon. Okay, and that you can just mark here as question number for this third type of question, question number 11. We are going to solve soon, question number 11. Question number 11 you will solve, and question number 2, there are many questions here for the second type. Many questions are there. We'll discuss that. So these are the three types of questions they will ask you. One, find out the forward rate or find out the spot rate or find out the interest rate given the other three variables. Second, one-way quotation is given and you have to find out where you will borrow from and where will you invest. And the third is two-way quotation is given and they will ask you to check where will you borrow from and where will you invest. Now paragraph 2 in your book, arbitrage using notional interest rate. This is second type of problem. Okay, type 2 problem where they will ask you where will you borrow from and where will you invest. Very simple trick I am going to tell you now. What is that trick? Listen to me very carefully. Listen to me carefully because sometimes the student find it difficult. This we will call notional interest rate method. What do you mean by notional interest rate? Notional interest rate means what should be interest rate in home country. What should be interest rate in home country so that there is no arbitrage. What should be interest rate in home country so that there is no arbitrage. So I will solve an equation. And find RD. RD means rate of interest in domestic country. So I will solve this equation 1 plus RD upon 1 plus RF. Just understand, equal to forward rate upon spot rate. Find RD. Solving this equation, find RD. What should be that rate of interest in domestic country so that arbitrage opportunity will not arise. Arbitrage opportunity will not arise if this equation is satisfied. Okay. So we will first, step 1 will be finding the notional interest rate in home country such that there is no arbitrage opportunity. So now I have got notional interest rate. This is what it should be, and this I will compare with actual interest rate. What is there in the market? So notional versus actual. Notional versus actual. Notional means what it should be. Actual means what it is. So now there are 3 possibilities. Actual is more than notional. It should be 10, but it is 12. Actual is less than notional. It should be 10, but it is 8. And both are equal. So once you are able to compute the notional interest rate and then compare with actual interest rate, you will be very easily able to determine from where you should borrow and where you should invest in a type 2 problem where one-way quotation is given. And we will follow this strategy in all such questions where they are asking us where should we borrow from and where we should invest. So now, to keep you awake, to keep you alert, engaged in the discussion, you have to do the fill in the blanks work. Start in your book, paragraph 2. Situation 1. Actual interest rate in domestic country is less than notional interest rate. Write down, draw these 4 columns and draw these 3 rows and write down in neat handwriting. First, situation 1, actual interest rate in domestic country is less than notional interest rate. Mentally think 2 numbers, actual is 8%, notional is 10%. Actual is 8, notional is 10. So what should happen now? If a country is offering less interest rate, will the money come into that country or money will flow out of that country? So the answer is money will flow from the home country and money will flow to the foreign country. So if suppose for example actual is 8, notional is 10, borrow in home country, because you can borrow at a lower rate than what it should be, and then invest in foreign country, arbitrage is possible. Arbitrage is possible. Dear student, write down case 2. Actual interest rate in domestic country greater than, more than notional interest rate, is more than notional interest rate. Is arbitrage possible? The answer is yes. Arbitrage is possible. The answer is yes. The moment they are not equal, the answer is yes, arbitrage is possible. Now your country suppose is offering 12% instead of 10. Very good. You can earn more than what you should earn. So if you can earn more than what you should earn, it will attract the foreign investment. So how do you make arbitrage profit? Borrow in foreign country, invest in home country. Instead of getting 10%, you are getting 12% in home country, and therefore you will make arbitrage profit. Third situation, write down. In one question we will come across third situation also. I am going to solve soon, but I am not going to tell you now which is that problem. Otherwise, without solving only you will be able to answer that there is no arbitrage. Actual interest rate, write down. You have to read also your own notebook one day. Actual interest rate in domestic country is equal to notional interest rate. Write in book if you can, otherwise write in notebook. Actual interest rate in domestic country is equal to notional interest rate. If what you should get and what you are getting are equal, there is no arbitrage possible. So write down the answer: no, not applicable, not applicable. Next paragraph, point number 3, logic behind IRPT, that is called covered interest arbitrage. When investment opportunities in two countries are different, covered interest arbitrage opportunities possible. What does that mean? It means that if IRPT theory is not getting applied, that is the equation 1 plus RD upon 1 plus RF equal to F by S, if that equation is not matching, if there is a mismatch, then it is possible to borrow in one country and invest in another country. This is called covered interest arbitrage. Borrow in one country, invest in another country, and making arbitrage profit is covered interest arbitrage. Paragraph number 4. So what I have done, you should thank me, I have prepared the steps that you will follow in the problem of arbitrage, right? The institute will ask you whether arbitrage is possible or not. First thing which you should do, find out the notional interest rate, compare with actual interest rate, and after comparing notional with actual interest rate as per this table, decide whether you will borrow in home country or whether you will borrow in foreign country. So the first part is finding the notional interest rate and deciding where you will borrow from and where will you invest. So after completing this first task, that is identifying where you have to borrow and where you will invest, then you perform the following 7 steps. Borrow from the country where the money will flow out, which you will find out as per the notional interest rate table. So borrow from the country where the money will flow out. Step number 2, convert the borrowed amount into other currency using spot rate. That means if you borrow in USA, convert into rupees at spot rate, or if you borrow in rupees, convert into US dollar at spot rate. Then step number 3, the amount that you have converted into other currency, invest that amount. Invest that amount as per step 2, whatever amount you got, invest in the other country that amount and immediately take a forward cover. Step number 4, take a forward cover because you know this is the amount I am going to receive. This is the amount I am going to receive So take a forward cover because your amounts are locked. These are interest rate. You know how much amount you are going to receive in the other currency on maturity. So take a forward cover. Now in your book you have to just mention, I think I have already written step 1, 2, 3, 4. You have to do it today, immediately, okay, very quickly, because arbitrage opportunity does not exist for a long time. By the time you keep thinking, the opportunity will go away. The forward rate would have changed by the time you open your laptop. So do it fast. Not you, you are a student after you qualify. And then now let us come to maturity date. Steps to be performed on maturity. Step number 5, 6, 7, 8. I have made an investment in a foreign country or a home country. Wherever you have made the investment, realize the investment along with interest. That interest they will give you, whether it is continuous compounding or your annual compounding or whatever. If continuous compounding is not mentioned in the problem, then you just do the interest calculation in a normal manner, okay. Then after that, reconvert the amount of step 5 to the currency in step 1 using forward rate. So in step number 5 you have made the investment. Convert into the currency in which you had borrowed in the step 1. Which rate you will use? Forward rate. The forward rate as given in the problem. Step number 7 will be, you have borrowed the amount in step 1, repay that borrowing in step 1 along with interest. And what is the source of your repayment? This step number 6 amount. So step number 6 will give you the amount that you have now after liquidating your investment. From that, repay the borrowing as per step 1 plus interest, and then you will be left with some positive cash flow. That is called arbitrage gain. The difference between step 6 and step 7 will give you some positive cash flow, and that is your arbitrage gain. So I'll repeat the step, and the next many questions on IRPT we are going to solve after this. First, you compute notional interest. Identify where will you borrow from. Borrow from that country where the money will flow out. Convert into the other currency using spot rate. Invest in the other currency. Take a forward cover. On maturity, realize the investment along with interest. Reconvert into the currency in which you had borrowed using forward rate. Repay the borrowing along with interest. And the difference between your step 6 and step 7 is your surplus, that is your arbitrage profit. Now we are going to solve one question number 1. Come to question number 1, printed below. The 6 months interest rate annualized in Italy and France is 13% and 11% respectively. So these are the interest rate which are per annum, annualized per annum. The current exchange rate is lira 296.10 per FF, and the 6-month forward rate is lira 297.80 per FF. Spot rate is given, forward rate is given, interest rate in the two countries are given. Lira is the currency of Italy and FF is the currency of France, and the time in this question is 6 months. Interest rate per annum in Italy is 13%, France is 11%. So these are some basic detail. Interest rate in Italy, interest rate in France, spot rate, 6 months, forward rate. Right. Where should a French investor invest? Where should a French party French person, French investor should invest. Where should he borrow from? These two questions are same. If you say he should invest in Italy, it means he should borrow in France. If you are saying he should invest in France, it means he should invest in borrow in Italy. So waste of time by giving two questions. It is actually same question. Is there any arbitrage opportunity for the investor? This question should have come here first. Okay, because once we check the arbitrage opportunity, then we can easily answer these two questions. And now they are asking what should be the forward exchange rate so that there is no arbitrage opportunity. So this I will find out using IRPT. Applying IRPT will find out that forward rate such that there is no arbitrage opportunity. Now this question has not mentioned which is the home country. So we'll have to make an assumption here. Calculation of forward exchange rate using interest rate parity theorem. So first I am answering the last question. Calculation of equilibrium forward exchange rate using interest rate parity theorem. And you write down one assumption. Home country is France. Because the question somewhere says where should a French investor invest? So I will assume that the question is from the point of view of a French investor. So we can assume home country is France. Then you will ask, can I assume Italy is home currency? You can. Your answer will be same because the numerator and denominator on both the sides will change. Home currency is France. If home currency is France, then the next line write down type of quote indirect quote. Why it is indirect quote? Because it is given lira per franc. Lira per franc is an indirect quote in France. Lira per franc is indirect quote in France. So write down 1 plus RD, 1 plus RD upon 1 plus RF is equal to spot rate. F by D means foreign currency per unit of domestic currency. F by D. If you don't want to write F by D, don't write. If you want to write, most welcome. Upon F, capital F means forward rate, and this F by D indicates foreign currency per unit of direct currency. Right below. RD means interest rate in France 11% per annum. RF means interest rate in Italy 13% per annum. SFD means spot rate 296.10 lira per FF. Lira per FF. RFD, FFD means capital F. Forward rate, indirect quote, we have to find. This is your fourth question. So let us solve that one, no problem. Write down below the equation 1 plus, you write below that formula 1 plus, since it is a problem of 6 months, I will multiply interest rate by 6 months. 1 plus in bracket 0.11 into 6 by 12 upon 1 plus 0.13 into 6 by 12 is equal to 296.10 upon F, and what is missing here? The equilibrium forward rate, so that there is no arbitrage opportunity. So this will become 1 plus 0.055. 1.055, this will become 1.065. 1.065, and this is 296.10 divided by F. Can we not solve it now? So F will be equal to, take on your calculator, 296.10 into 1.065 and divide by 1.055. So that comes to 298.9066. Directly write this line, lira per FF. 298.9066 lira per FF. This is your fourth answer. So fourth answer tick mark. Fourth answer tick mark. Fourth answer tick mark. Fourth answer is over. Now we'll solve first three part. What are the first three parts? Now we'll come to this question. Is there any arbitrage opportunity for the investor? So answer of that question will be yes. There is an arbitrage opportunity. For the investor, because actual 6-month forward rate is different from your actual 6-month forward rate is this on the screen, top third line, and what you have calculated is different. You can check in the notebook. Is different from equilibrium forward rate. Is different from equilibrium forward rate. Is different from equilibrium forward rate. So arbitrage opportunity exists for the investor. Now we have answered this question. Next is, where should French investor invest and where should he borrow? These two questions are same. So to decide where he should borrow and where he should invest, I will calculate the notional interest rate in France. Okay. After computing notional interest rate in France, I will compare with this 11% actual interest rate, and then we will decide whether I should borrow in France or I should invest in France. So now, dear student, write down, listen to me and write down. Don't write the heading because I have to do some calculation in the class. Calculation of notional interest rate in France using interest rate parity theorem. Calculation of notional interest rate in France using interest rate parity theorem. So write down 1 plus RD into 6 by 12. Why 6 by 12? 6-month problem. Upon 1 plus RF into 6 by 12. And this is equal to spot rate upon forward rate. When we should use spot rate upon forward rate? Since indirect quote is given. If indirect quote is given, Then we apply the equation 1 plus RD upon 1 plus RF equal to S by F. And this is missing, RD is missing now. So 1 plus RD, 6 by 12 means 0.5 upon 1 plus RF. RF means interest rate in France, no, interest rate in Italy. Italy is the foreign country. 0.13 into 6 by 12 means 0.5, and that is equal to spot rate is given 296.10 and forward rate is given 297.80. With these rates given, what should have been the interest rate in France? So this will become 1 plus 0.5 RD. RD means interest rate in France, and this is 1.065, and this is equal to, I will take on calculator, 296.10 divided by 297.8 equal to, so that comes to 0.99429. Now I will do the cross multiplication of this. So 1 plus 0.5 RD is equal to, just multiply 0.99429 something on your calculator into 1.065, and that comes to 1.0589. So 0.5 RD will become equal to 1.0589 minus 1. So that is 0.0589. So RD will become equal to 0.0589 divided by 0.5, that is 11.78%. This way we will solve the equation in this chapter. One problem I did it purposefully, that this is how the equation will be solved, and you will find the missing figure. Go step by step, line by line, you will get it. So 11.78% is the notional interest rate. In bracket now write notional interest rate. Got it? Now I am going to write down next line. Actual interest rate is in France is equal to 11%. Evaluation, actual interest rate in France is less than, actual interest rate in France is less than notional interest rate. Actual interest rate in France is less than notional interest rate. Therefore, money will flow out of France. Money will flow out of France. France is offering you less interest than what it should be. Hence, now the concluding line, the French investor should borrow in France because it is cheaper to borrow in France. Instead of 11.78%, you can borrow at 11%. The French investor should borrow in France and invest in Italy. So you have answered two questions in one line. Where should a French investor invest? Italy. Where should he borrow from? He should borrow from France. So this is the answer of this question number 1. Now we'll go to question number 2. This question they have asked many times in the exam. Mark very, very important. First they asked in May 2006, then November 2010 and some more times, or similar questions with different figures. Very easy problem. Like question 1, we will solve it. This is an exam question on multiple occasions. Given the following information, exchange rate Canadian dollar 0.665 per dm, CAD per dm. Dm is Deutsche Mark. Deutsche Mark is the previous currency of Germany. Earlier in Germany, the currency was called Deutsche Mark or just Mark. So what you are given is CAD per dm 0.665 spot, and Canadian dollar per dm is 0.670. That is your forward rate for 3 months. Interest rate in dm means Germany is 7% and interest rate in Canada is 9%. Like previous question, you are given spot rate, forward rate, interest rates in one country, interest rate in other country, what operations would be carried out. Now when the problem asks you what operations would be carried out, it means you will have to show all the steps involved in arbitrage. Where will you borrow, where will you invest, how much you will realize on maturity, and then how much arbitrage gain you will have. What operations will be carried out to take the possible arbitrage gain. Two things are missing in this problem. One, which is the home country, not mentioned. Second, what should be the amount one can think of borrowing or investing. So we will assume one of these two countries, either Canada or Germany, as home country, and will take a notional principal amount to carry out the arbitrage. So what you do, first write down one assumption. If the problem says particular country is home country, my job is simple. If they don't say, then I will look for some hint. In previous problem, the hint was where would a French investor invest. So I took that as a hint. In this question, there is no hint. But to keep my calculation simple, I will try to use a direct quote. Canadian dollar per dm. Canadian dollar per dm is a direct quote in Canada and indirect quote in Germany. So tell me, you are comfortable with direct or indirect quote? So you will say, sir, we are comfortable with any quote. Okay, but I can't solve twice, so I will only solve using direct quote. So assuming Canada as home country gives me direct quote calculation. In order to check where we will borrow from and where we will invest, I will first calculate the notional interest rate in Canada, because you have assumed Canada is the home country. So write down the step 1, calculate notional interest rate in Canada. Calculate notional interest rate in Canada. The equation will be 1 plus RD into 3 by 12 upon 1 plus RF into 3 by 12, and that is equal to forward rate upon spot rate. Why we have taken forward by spot in this example? Because direct quote is given in Canada, bracket in bracket being a direct quote. Previous problem we have taken S by F because it was indirect quote. Now put the numbers, and I have told you how to solve the equation. So 3 by 12 means 0.25. Missing figure is RD. I need to know what should be the interest rate in Canada at which there is no arbitrage. So 1 plus RD into 0.25 upon 1 plus 0.07 into 0.25 is equal to 0.670 divided by 0.665. I am sure you will be able to solve it now. After you solve it, check the answer. RD should be equal to 10.06% per annum. 10.06% per annum. Per annum also right. So in Canada, the interest rate should have been 10.06%. Should have been. And what is the actual interest rate in Canada? 9%. Canada is offering 9% interest rate actually, but it should have offered 10.06%. So what will happen? Will money flow out of Canada or flow into Canada? So if you will offer less interest, money will flow out of Canada. So money will flow out of Canada means borrow in Canada and invest in Germany. So step number 2, write down actual interest rate in Canada is equal to 9%. Actual interest rate in Canada is equal to 9%. Step 3, evaluation. Evaluation. Actual interest rate is less than. Actual interest rate is less than notional interest rate. Actual interest rate is less than notional interest rate. Therefore, money will flow out of Canada. Money will flow out of Canada. Money will flow out of Canada in bracket borrow in Canada. Borrow in Canada and invest in Germany. In bracket write borrow in Canada and invest in Germany. So my first hurdle we have passed, where we should borrow from and where we should invest. Once you cross that hurdle, now the job is to execute your arbitrage strategy, and that you have to write in detail because that is your question, what operations would be carried out. So step 4, write down arbitrage strategy. Under that one, borrow Canadian dollar. Borrow CAD, or you can write Canadian dollar 1000. Now where is 1000 in the question? It's not there. We are assuming that you will borrow 1000. Sir, can I take 500? Most welcome. Can I take 2 lakh? Most welcome. So take any number. Okay, I have taken 1000. You can take 1 lakh also. At 9% per annum. Canada is offering you interest rate 9% in actuality. So take 9% for 3 months. Then what I'll do, after I borrow, I'll convert into DM. Convert Canadian dollar 1000 into DM at spot rate. Convert Canadian dollar 1000 into DM at the spot rate. Now I will give you a chance to convert this $1000 into DM using the spot rate. The spot rate is 0.665 Canadian dollar per DM. You have Canadian dollar, rate is per DM. You will divide 1000 divided by 0.665. In the basics we have discussed when to multiply and when to divide. This is Canadian dollar, this is rate per DM, divide. So now you will be holding 1503.7 DM. What will you do with this? You will invest in Germany for 3 months. Invest DM 1503.7 for 3 months at 7% per annum. Then we will wait for 3 months now. after 3 months this investment will mature and we will recover DM plus interest. So step number 4 will be amount received in DM after 3 months. Amount received in DM after 3 months. So you will take the principal amount 1503.7 and you will add the 3 months interest. The 3-month interest will be 1503.7 into time 3 by 12 into rate of interest per annum 7%. So that gives me final answer 1530 DM. Where we have borrowed in Canada. This amount you are holding in DM after 3 months. So I need to reconvert this amount into Canadian dollar so that I can pay my liability in Canadian dollar. Step number 5 will be reconvert DM into Canadian dollar at 3-month forward rate. Go to the question. Now you are holding DM 1530. Rate is also per DM. So you will multiply. Look at the question. The rate is 0.670. 0.670 forward rate. 1530 into 0.670. You are holding now 1025.1 Canadian dollar. You have borrowed 1000 Canadian dollar at 9% for 3 months. So now you have to repay this out of this amount, and if there is any positive difference, that is your arbitrage gain. So step number 6 I will write repay the Canadian dollar borrowing along with the interest. Borrowed 1000 plus interest for 3 months, principal, rate, time. Simple interest I have calculated, nothing is mentioned. So 1000 into 9% into 3 by 12. First you calculate interest, add 1000, you will get 1022.50 Canadian dollar. You are holding 1025.1. You will repay 1022.50. Are you left with some surplus? Yes. That is my arbitrage gain. So write down arbitrage gain equal to 1025.1 minus 1022.50. Take your calculator. So for every $1000 Canadian dollar you will borrow, you will make an arbitrage gain of 2.60 Canadian dollar. No risk, no investment, from your own pocket, and still you are making a profit of 2.60, and that is because this forward rate quoted was not in equilibrium, and hence you could make the arbitrage gain here, right? So this answer is over. Now we'll take a break.